Good evening, everybody. I'm sorry about that. It's 6 o'clock and it's Friday, so it's time for Flashcard Friday. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to join me. And I wanted to cover something today, and I'm going to do my best to keep us within the time frame. But there's a lot of material to cover, so we'll do our best. Uh, but one of the things that you hear a lot when somebody's going through a hard time is, why is God punishing me? What did I do wrong that God's gotta do this thing to me? And it comes from kind of the view that we have when we start to look at this book. So what I want to take a look at today is redemptive versus punitive. So kind of like, if you guys remember, a few weeks ago Pastor Chad talked about some different colored glasses, kind of as the lens that you use to look at the Bible. And I want to take the punitive lens off and I want to put the redemptive lens on. And I want to take a closer look at some of these things that that just can just get so confusing. Hey, Carol. Um, and like right off the bat, if you're talking to somebody who's a non-believer and you say the word, there are 613 laws found in the Old Testament, you're going to freak them out and they're going to run the other way because that to them just sounds insane. And even, like when I think about it too, when I look at it as a law, uh, the, just the word law alone has a difficult structure to it. But the reality is, everything that God did was to have a relationship with us, to show us how much He cared for us. Um, and these 613 laws, they're broken up into three different categories. So we're going to cover each category. And with two of them, I was able to pick out one. Well, in one of them, I picked out one, and then some of them I just wasn't able to do that. But I still think it'll be a lot of fun. But in those laws, you have a ceremonial law. So those would be more of our behavior as it relates to God, and different aspects like that. The different things that we're supposed to do. So these are they're more do's, but there are some do nots in this. Then you have civil laws. Those are those are kind of our behavior in public. Again, different things to do and different things not to do. And then we have moral laws, and those are kind of where our thought process is going. And you'll hear a lot of people talk about our moral center. And it's basically it's those things that are good, and then those things that are not good. So, um, of all of these 613 laws, you can trace them back to the Ten Commandments. Okay, so you can trace them back to the 10 rules that God gave Moses to give the Israelites after they came out of Egypt. You can trace them back to Genesis, but you're going to be all over Genesis when you do that, which is not a bad thing. But for trying to understand this, we're just going to take it back to the 10 Commandments. So in Exodus 20, verses 8 through 11, this is the Sabbath. Okay, and I'm going to read it, and then we're going to talk about it a little bit. Okay, again, it's verses 8 through 11. Remember the Sabbath. Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you will not do any work, neither you, nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your male or female servant, nor your animals, nor any foreigner residing in your towns. For in 6 days, excuse me, for in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth and the sea and all that is in them, but He rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. Now, I know some of you, if you have any type of a church background, um, your mom or your dad or both of them would get angry if you did anything on Sunday after church. That was a day of rest. You weren't supposed to play in the yard. You weren't supposed to go swimming. You weren't supposed to go to the grocery store. There was this whole list of things that you weren't supposed to do. And if you did those things, you would make God mad. But if you take a moment and you think about where the Ten Commandments came from, you have an Israelite nation that just spent 400 years in captivity, 400 years as slaves. And part of the Egyptian rule and the Egyptian law, Egyptians had a lot of gods. They had, they pretty much for everything, they had a god. There was a god of the sun, a god of the moon, a god of the stars, a god of the ground. There were all these different things, but their gods were designed to be scary. So you had to be afraid of them. And what they did with the Israelite slaves was for anywhere from 16 to 18 hours during the day, they worked. And they worked to please the sun god. And then at night, for that, 4 to 6, that 4 to 8 hours that they might get to sleep, they had to be wary of the serpent god, and they had to be wary of the moon god. So they slept in fear, and it made things incredibly difficult for them. So the average age for an Israelite male during that time frame was 30 years. And it was simply because they were exhausted by the time they hit that, because this was 365 days a year. They did not get a day off for 400 years. Well, any human body is going to give out after a certain amount of time. So yes, in Genesis 1, you see that God rested, and you can trace it back to that. But really, what God is saying here is, look, you're my kids. I love you. I care about you. I just want you to be able to sleep in. I want you to be able to have a quiet day. You know, I understand, that you guys need all of this to understand it, because even when you go into the Levitical laws, the Levitical laws break it down even more. They had to count their steps. They had to feed their animals at certain time frames. And there were just all of these things. And God's saying, if you want to do all of that stuff, that's okay. But I really just want you to rest. I want you to celebrate me and celebrate the fact that I brought you out of that 400 years of captivity. I want you to know that I love you and that I care about you. So, like when you stop and you look at it from that perspective, it's like all of a sudden, it's not punitive. He's not mad if you have to go to the grocery store, or, you decide that you want to eat at a restaurant. He's not mad at the waiters or the cooks or anything like that. He's not even saying, and some will argue this, and I totally understand, it doesn't even mean that your Sabbath is on Sunday. A lot of pastors work on Saturday, so their Sabbath is either Saturday or Monday. And that's an argument for a different day, and maybe we'll talk Pastor Chad into taking that one on, because I'm not so sure I want to go there with that one. But when you get to these ceremonial laws, and there are a few more, actually there are quite a few more in the Bible, what God is really saying is, you guys have been doing all of these rituals in captivity and in slavery, and I don't want you doing all of that. I don't think you need all of that. All you need is me. All you need is your relationship with me. And then, I want you guys to know, I tried to pick one in the civil laws, but there were just too many to choose from. The majority of them are dealing with things that make you unclean. So when you think about touching the skin of a pig, um, eating meat with blood in it, touching a leper, there's a multitude of things that they considered making you unclean. There are 182 of them total in the Bible. 172 of them are found in the Old Testament, and 108 are found in Leviticus. Now again, you can trace them all back. When you trace these back to the 10 Commandments, they really fit all 10, of the commandments. There's, different ones that you can kind of piece them into each one of those 10 Commandments. So I didn't pull a single one of them out, but if you really think about it, in this culture, again, coming out of Israel, they didn't have doctors. Usually your doctor was your mom. And even later on during the time of Jesus, their knowledge of medicine and that kind of thing was still limited. So things that made you unclean were typically things that could make you sick. So touching the skin of a pig, pigs were notorious for infections all over their skin, and some of those infections were transferable to humans. So if you touched the skin of a pig, it took time to get that off, and it took time to make sure that you didn't actually get that infection. Leprosy, today it's called Hansen's disease, but during that time frame it was highly contagious. And touching the garment, of somebody with leprosy could actually transfer that disease to you. So lepers were sent outside. They were sent outside the city. There were ways that they had to dress. They had to not wash their hair. Their clothes had to be tattered and torn, and they had to walk around the town yelling out that they were unclean. And and it was basically so that if you were hard of hearing or hard of seeing, you would know not to go near that person. Not, like when we think about that today, that's not the friendliest thing to do. But during this time frame, it was all about keeping them healthy. It wasn't designed to trip you up or make you stumble or, do anything like that, but it was just simply, if you have an ailment, we don't want to spread it to everybody. I could make correlations to the pandemic, but that's a little bit too much of a touchy subject, so I'm not going to go there. But there are some correlations, that you could find in that. I'm not saying what's happening is right or wrong, but you can make some correlations there. So again, these weren't punitive. These were, I love you, I love all of my kids, and I want all of my children to be healthy. So if you're unhealthy for whatever reason, stay outside the town for 7 days, get yourself clean, and come back in. There was nothing that said that they could never come back in. Once they were made clean, they could come back. So, again, this is I love you, I love all of you, and I want to keep all of you around. It's not punitive, it's redemptive. And then the back half of Exodus, we have the moral laws. So again, these are where your brain is focusing on. It's, what are those things that you consider right or you consider wrong, and that type of a thing. But again, when we really take a look at them, you're going to find that they're redemptive. They're not punitive. But we'll take a look at them really quick, and it's Exodus 20, verses 13 through 17. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or his male or female servant, his ox or donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. Again, it feels like it's a restriction. And if you do something, if you do one of these things, you're going to be in trouble. And we can make those punitive. But if you think about what they went through in Egypt, there were laws about Israelites could kill each other with no penalty. It was only a penalty if you killed an Egyptian, but they could care less about their slaves. So if you liked your neighbor's wife, you could kill him and take his wife. If you liked your neighbor's cutlery set, you could kill him, or you could just steal from him, or you could do all of these things, and there was no penalty for it. So when they come out of that 400 years, God's like, wait a minute. This is your brother. This is your family. That's not how my family acts. I love you guys too much to let you quarrel amongst yourselves. When you get into do not commit adultery, Egyptians, just like Romans and all of the others, they were known for these wild parties that lasted for months. And in those, the women were hurt. And actually women and small children, they were hurt in these, and they were damaged for the rest of their lives. So, again, God is saying, that's not the life I have for you. I have something so much better, but I need you guys to stop looking at me like it's punitive. It's because I want a relationship with you. So if you think about it, think about how your parents raised you, and even how you raised your own children, or how you, if you don't have children, how you've watched other people raise theirs. When you have rules in your home, like you're going to be in bed by 10 o'clock, or as they get older, I want you inside by midnight. Don't put that screwdriver in the light socket. You're not saying that because you're this big authoritarian. You're saying that because you know what happens if they don't. Or you know what happens if they do. So if your child stays out past midnight, well, you have to think about car accidents. You have to think about kidnappings. You have to think, about them being hurt. That there are so many things. And again, it's not because you're trying to trip them up. So you're sitting there, and it's 12:01 when they walk in the door, and you're there. You're there with your Bible, ready to beat them over the head. That's not why you're doing it. You're doing it because you care about them. God is not this unibrowed librarian who's waiting for you to mess up so he can beat you over the head with the Bible. That's not his point in all of this. He wants a relationship with you. And I'm going to read a passage as we close up that I think kind of answers, that whole thing. And yes, this is Paul talking to some people that he's helped convert. But if you remember, in First or Second Timothy, it's 3:16. I know that much. It says that all Scripture is God-breathed and suitable for teaching. That means that this entire thing, this entire book, from cover to cover, is about our relationship with God. So even though this is Paul talking to some of the people that he's helped move towards Christ, it is applicable in this situation as well. And that's 2 Corinthians 6, verse 3. We put no stumbling block in anyone's path so that our ministry will not be discredited. God is not giving you all of this stuff to trip you up or to make you look bad. He's doing this so that you can have a full and a complete relationship with him. He's doing this because he loves you, because he wants to redeem everything, not because he wants to beat you up. So as you go into the world, and you talk with your friends at work, or you talk, you talk to your kids or anything like that, don't beat them over the head with God. Tell them your story. Tell them how God saved you. Tell them how He's redeemed you. And then show them all of this stuff. So I want to thank you guys for hanging out with me. I had a great time. If you have any questions, put them in the comments, and I will do my best to get back with you. Also, if there's any topic that you want to see either Chad or myself cover, again, put them in the comments or send us an email. We would absolutely love to do some things that you guys want to talk about. So thanks for hanging out with me, and I look forward to seeing you guys on Sunday. Love ya. Bye.